Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our webinar series. It's been a little bit, but definitely glad to come to you today and discuss a little bit about what has kind of become an annual tradition of basically discussing the admissions trends that we're noticing from the past class of seniors, and kind of also discussing kind of next steps for in current juniors, incoming seniors to get ready for the next admissions process. Today, I'm joined by Katie and Danny on our team. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself, and then Danny?
Sure. Hey, everybody. If you've been to our webinar series before, you probably know my face. No headband today, but hey, I'm Katie Young. I'm Associate Consulting Director here at Illumin Education. I've been in this admissions business for quite a while, and we've got some interesting trends for you today. Hope that you'll enjoy. Thanks for coming.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danny Yu, and I'm an educational consultant with Illumin. Very excited to have everyone here and connecting with you today. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
absolutely. And if you're this is a first Illumin webinar, just to give some quick thoughts, because definitely use the Q&A, use the chat, put down questions or thoughts whenever you have them. We'll come to them at the end. So you might not hear Danny or Katie comment about it immediately, but I'll go behind the scenes and take a look, and we'll definitely discuss them at the end. And since we've got a lot to go through, I'm definitely going to pass the baton to Danny and Katie to continue the presentation today.
All right, so just a quick overview of our agenda. We're going to identify some major trends around college admissions and college outcomes. We're going to review a couple of case studies of our own students, and then of course connect that to how we can serve you in our education consulting firm. So I'll turn it over to Danny for our first trend.
All righty, so our first trend of the day is that submitting your standardized test scores in most cases will help you. And in the era of test optional, we do have some surprising data. And it's that there's higher admit rates for students who submitted their test scores. So for example, in the early round of 2020-21, 76% of admits at Penn and 93% of admits at Georgetown submitted their test scores. And we're seeing a similar trend at other top schools like Emory, Colgate, Georgia Tech, and Vanderbilt, sometimes with almost double the admit rate for students who submitted versus students who did not submit. So
did I skip one? Sorry, hold on.
I think so.
Very good. Sorry,
Perfect.
Dan.
Thank you, Katie. However, some of the top colleges are reinstating the test required policy. In a recent study of 207 schools, whopping 20 to 30% of those schools expressed an intent to return to the test required position within 3 to 5 years. So after the pandemic, and top schools like MIT, Georgetown, and Georgia Tech are already back to requiring standardized tests. And other top schools like Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, and Stanford have not committed to a long-term test optional policy. But it's important to mention that UCs are all remaining test blind for the foreseeable future, so you don't have to worry about the UCs. We are also seeing that there are fewer students who are reporting test scores. So before the pandemic, 2019-20 admission cycle, 77% of students applying through Common App reported their scores. This past cycle, that number is down to about 50% submitting. So it's interesting that we have evidence that colleges are still valuing test scores, yet only half are submitting scores. And our advice at Illumin would be you can decide whether to submit on a school-by-school basis. So our tip at Illumin would be to go ahead and submit your test score if it is above the 50th percentile for the college you're applying to. And you can easily find this information at the college websites, usually under freshman profile or admissions facts. So here is an example from CMU, which is an extremely competitive school. So you can see that the numbers for the average SAT score of admits differs by college. So your major does matter strategically, and we will get back to that later in the presentation. And so just to give you another example, this is from UIUC, stats from UIUC's freshman admits, and from their College of Business and College of Engineering. So what does all the data point toward? It tells us that test scores still matter, especially at the top tier colleges, because test scores are a valuable data point. And with so many test optional applicants, it can really set you apart if you have a high test score. And the pandemic is no longer an excuse not to take the test. So our advice at Illumin would be to keep your options open by taking the test, especially for schools who are moving towards the test required policy.
All right. Thanks, Danny. So I'll move on to trend number 2. So one thing that I've heard a lot this year, a question from parents, is why aren't top students getting into top colleges? And this seems to be a trend that kind of compounds every year, where we're more and more confused about why the results are coming out the way that they are. So we're going to try to explain a little bit about this trend for you today. So the pandemic kind of impacted our youth in general, as well as our culture, obviously, and therefore it had to reflect in the admissions landscape as well. So the new normal that our students are facing, looking at their resumes compared to past students, there are fewer activities, fewer hours of activities, obviously. Fewer summer programs were open. A lot of programs are still online or not back this year still, just an overabundance of precaution. There are limited opportunities to visit college, which is part of demonstrating interest, which we'll talk about in a little while. And a lot of students prioritizing mental health rather than pushing themselves, too far, getting over involved, really trying to take care of themselves. So smaller impacts, but they're still present. We're still seeing them this year. These will phase out in a little bit, but online schools, a lot of our students had pass-fail grades for 1 year in freshman year. A lot of students struggled to build bonds with teachers early on or build big study habits that would be useful to them today. And that impacted their performance in subsequent years. There was also limited access to testing, as we all know. So a lot of students, this is the reason why a lot of schools are still test optional, just keeping in mind that some students were not able to access tests, but this problem seems to be abated. So with this new landscape, what we're noticing is a removal of barriers. So I think this won't be a surprise to anyone. I think we mentioned this last year as well, because students don't have to pay application fees or apply early or go through testing. They're able to overcome some of the barriers that used to prevent them from applying to top colleges. And in addition to that, there's way more college access funding, emphasis on equality in college admissions, lots more scholarships than ever before, a bigger emphasis on FAFSA, financial aid. So students from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds are applying more than ever before. Colleges are shifting their focus, making sure to really emphasize to their officers to do a holistic review. And this shouldn't be new. Colleges have always been doing a holistic review, but especially emphasizing achievement in context rather than just achievement itself. So despite your circumstances and everything you were up against, what were you still able to accomplish? And compared to your peers, how impressive is that? And then prioritizing diversity on campus. Obviously, there's been a lot of social change, social movements. Colleges are always on the forefront of, embracing diversity. Most colleges are pretty liberal. And so there's a big emphasis now on making sure that campuses are welcoming and inclusive, and breaking down those barriers. But despite these new emphasis, areas of emphasis for college admissions, there's still traditions that are in place. So colleges are still caring about things like legacy. Did your parents go here? Did your grandparents go here? Is your family rich? Are they going to donate something if we let you in? Are you an athlete? Are you talented? Are you going to bring revenue and recognition to our school in some way? Are you like Tom Hanks's kid? I don't know. So what that means is that we're looking at underrepresented students, barriers removed for students that are not traditionally applying to colleges. Then we've got all the kids that were already applying to colleges, including 26,000 valedictorians in the United States. Plus we've got international students in the mix, which we haven't even gotten to yet. And there's only 15,000 spots in the Ivy League for freshmen maximum. So grades simply cannot be the determining factor here. So when we think of a top student, traditionally what we're thinking about is a 4.0 GPA. All these kids have a 4.0 GPA. So we know that that's not the factor that's making the difference here for their admissions. So what is? Our tip is to focus on fit to get around this issue. And so I'm going to explain a little bit about what that means. So when you think about fit, you're thinking about advocating for yourself and showing the college why you are the right person for the job. So it's think of it as a job interview. You're trying to show them your past experiences, show them the kind of person you are, show them what your goals are so that they know that you fit into their culture and their campus. One great way to do that is through your essays. Again, this information should not be surprising, but I guess what I want to emphasize is that the focus is shifting in the admissions office to put more weight on factors like this, because they think that factors like your personal qualities and values are bigger indicators of your ability to fit in and succeed on their campus versus your GPA. So your personal essays give you a chance to reveal who you are, dig deep, show your potential. There's traits identified by psychologists that are indicative of a child's ability to succeed in college and beyond. Among those are curiosity, grit, and zeal. Everyone should watch Angela Duckworth's TED Talk if you haven't already. Your essays give you a chance to connect the dots for the admissions committee. So why did you make this choice and then this choice and then this choice? How is this choice building a block or a ladder for you to get to the next step in your journey, your goals? And it gives you a chance to give them your voice and make your case. So a lot of colleges won't have interviews, especially because of the pandemic. There's no visits, right? So this is a really good chance to really connect. So again, focusing on fit by advocating for yourself and how you would fit into campus using your personal essays, more important than having perfect grades, perfect scores. Demonstrated interest is another really big factor when it comes to fit. And emphasizing fit in your application. So how does your dream college know it's your dream college? You have to tell them that. How are they going to know that? And a lot of their essays are not going to say, hey, why is our college your dream college? So you have to indicate that in other ways, because colleges are going to admit students that they are confident are going to accept their offer. There's a whole blog that Illumin sent out if you're on our mailing list about yield protection, yield rates. This is an indicator that colleges are really emphasizing, money. They have to stay afloat. They have to make sure that the students they accept are actually going to take the spot and pay them so that they can continue to function and exist. So a student who was admitted to Berkeley may have been rejected from Riverside because Riverside is looking at their application going, this kid is too good for us. They're never going to accept our offer. And we don't have enough money to sweeten the pot. So we're looking at students who are being rejected from safety schools. So demonstrated interest is important for managing yield. If I had articulated that Riverside was my dream school, maybe that would have made a difference in my application, maybe not. And what we're noticing as a result of this is that early decision results this year for Illumin students were a lot better than our regular decision results. When you apply early decision, you're making a commitment right away to attend that school if accepted. So consider that as part of your strategy as well. Great way to demonstrate your interest, great way to demonstrate it's your dream school. Engaging with colleges online, it seems unglamorous, but there are many chances to attend webinars. There are many chances to engage, as far as, opening an email, responding to an email, visiting a blog, whatever they send you. If you like that college, just open it, get on their mailing list. And then use your application essays to really research. So don't just say, I want to go to your school because you got good research. Tell me exactly what lab you want to join and what professor you want to work with. And then I can tell that you care. Sorry, I know I talk a lot. Okay, so another factor when it comes to finding colleges that are a good fit is to broaden your college search. So thinking about where you would be a unique applicant. So if there's a school, I remember a couple slides back, Danny had an example of Colgate. I know you can't raise your hand, but raise your hand if you've ever heard of Colgate, right? There's a lot of schools that are excellent that have less than 10% acceptance rates that are just not popular among our students. So whereas the entire senior class is applying to UC Santa Barbara, maybe there's 2 kids applying to Colgate. That gives you a chance to stand out. And if that's what you value, right, is like a high ranking or low acceptance rate, those sorts of things, you got to look beyond the traditional colleges that you've heard before, if that's your value. But we don't suggest that. We suggest that you research colleges based on factors that are important to you. So what do you care about a ranking when you're on the campus, when you're living a daily life, when you're going to classes, when you're meeting people? You want to think about what the community is like and how you're going to engage with it. So maybe you are a person who wants to do research, and that's great. So why don't you research colleges with the highest number of opportunities for undergraduates to do research or the most funding? In your specific subject. That's something that you can research online. You can also use rankings lists for that. They make best undergraduate research rankings lists, right? So you don't have to look at an arbitrary number that's based on alumni reviews, US News. You can look at one that pays more attention to factors that are actually going to impact your experience. And don't dismiss your safety schools. So there's a lot of schools out there that have high acceptance rates. That doesn't mean they're bad schools. They still have tons of money. They still have computer science programs. They still have dorms, places to live. You're going to be okay. And what's great about safety schools is that they want to raise their ranking because they know that's how they get more students. So the higher caliber students they get in, the higher their rankings go, the more publicity they get, the more like Bill Gateses they churn out, right? I don't know why I'm using that example. I'm like 80. But you're going to get more money from them. If they like you, they want you to attend, they know you're going to get into Berkeley. So what are they going to do? They're going to give you a competing offer. They're going to make it cheaper for you to go there. They're going to give you a fancy dorm. They're going to let you pick your classes first. Whatever it is, they're going to throw it at you. So very much emphasize your safety schools and research them just as heavily as you're researching your reach schools. If you really look into honors programs, especially Arizona State University's Barrett honors program, their admissions rate and their outcomes are very comparable to top tier colleges. Google it, I promise, I'm not kidding. And in these schools, if you're an excellent student and this is a safety school for you, it's probably not a safety school for everybody else. So it might be easier for you to stand out, build relationships with professors, things like that, so that you can get great letters of rec, get all the cool opportunities on campus, and get recruited. Okay, I'm going to end my spiel now. This is what I yell at my students about. So how Luma can help you. If you're in 9th and 10th grade, we want you to learn about yourself. We want you to learn about what's out there. You've seen Stanford, you get it. There's other schools. We're going to look at those early on so that you can start to establish what is your dream, so that you can visit, so that you can engage, so that you can demonstrate your interest and write essays that are really meaningful. If you're in 11th grade right now, come on in. We can help you build a personalized college list that emphasizes factors that are important to you. We can identify unique opportunities that are going to be featured in your essays to show you really did your research. We're going to give you all the resources you need to do that, and we're going to give you one-on-one essay advising. And then I skipped this, but this is actually pretty important. You're allowed to choose, like the same way Danny said, you're able to choose which colleges to send your test scores to. You don't have to send it to every college. You don't have to major in the same thing at every college either. You can change it up. So if you're thinking you want to do something with technology, but you're not sure what, we can help you research what are the weird options, the unique options where you might be able to get around that big crowd of computer science applicants. Okay. So we have a case study that Danny's going to go over for you. Is this the right one, Danny?
This is the right one. Thank you. So we have a case study of a student example who had extreme success with a non-impacted major when applying. So JK was a student of ours. We worked with him for many years, and his passion was in geography. And as you can see, he had slightly lower GPA and ACT score for Stanford, but he really leveraged his passion in a non-impacted major, geography, to really find that niche and developed his resume throughout high school with third-party validated activities such as internships, research experience, competitive programs, and he ended up gaining acceptance to his dream school and also other top schools, amazing schools. So, this was a really strong example for us to see the power of choosing a non-impacted major. So, and we actually have a couple more other examples of student cases, but in the interest of time, we will move on to the next trend, and we can come back to the student examples when we have time in the end.
All right, so trend number 3. Sorry, this is me back on my stuff. College rankings have little to do with your postgraduate success. And this is a trend we've been noticing popping up a lot in the media, lots of research, lots of articles. So we're going to go through some of those with you. So Oops, I skipped one, I'm sorry. So a key employment trend, we have an emerging degree reset report, which sounds really fancy, from Harvard Business School. They did a lot of research on 51 million job postings over the last 4 or 5 years. And what they've noticed is that demands for having a degree in the field that you're applying for, and even having a degree at all, has lessened a lot. So at this point, only 26% or 29%, depending on the tech company you're looking at. We just pulled these out. These were pretty common across the board. Some were higher, some were lower. I'm sure when you Google this, you'll see that, I don't know, companies like Apple might be different, but there are companies out there who are willing to let things like degrees go in favor of skills, and allowing their candidates to demonstrate their skills in different ways. So any of you who've applied for a tech job before, I mean, my husband's an engineering manager. He does a lot of interviews where he asks really tough questions and makes people solve problems on the spot, right? That's what they're assessing for. And you can go to Florida State, Iowa State, doesn't matter, as long as you've got that skill set that they're looking for, you're going to be the person that gets the job. So it's not as important to have a degree in computer science. You could minor in computer science and still build the same skills, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So lessons we can take away from this: majoring is not the only way that you can gain experience, gain skills. You can minor. So you can go in as, let's say, a geography major, pick up a minor in computer science once you get there. You can still take all of these. I'm talking about computer science a lot, I feel like, but I have this conversation all the time. Like, all the students I meet, all the parents, you know, despite what the student is interested in, the parents are like, and computer science. So I think it's a really important skill set. And I know it's one that is very sought after. So that's why I'm emphasizing it. But I would say the same thing applies to engineering, business, any of those really popular majors. We'll get into some of those alternatives in a minute. But minors are something you add after you're admitted. So you don't have to apply for a minor. You will kind of just speak to your academic advisor at your campus and get onboarded into that minor. You may have to spend an extra semester, an extra summer to get that done, but it's not impossible, and it will allow you to kind of subvert the crowd a little bit when you apply as a freshman. Undergraduate research is open for application. So you don't have to be in the major to do research. You can apply for the position at the laboratory despite whatever you're studying. Again, as long as you can demonstrate the skill set and the experience necessary. So if you're scrappy, you got a network, you've got connections, use your time wisely. You're a go-getter, upstarter. These are all things that you can do. So those are the skills you should be developing now. I'm a person who hid in the back of my classroom and never spoke to my professors, never raised my hand, never did anything. And when I went to apply to graduate school, I had nothing. I had no recommendations. Like, there was nothing I could do. So this is important. It's a skill set that you have to have, and a mindset that you have to have going into college. You're not just taking classes and getting your degree. Internships and co-ops, these are things that are available through colleges and even through curriculum. Northeastern's very popular for this. Drexel's very popular for this. Elon University, they integrate these into the curriculum so that you're spending 3 years as a student and 1 full year before you even graduate as an intern. You're making money, you're being placed at internships that are very prestigious, and that experience is going to be very valuable on your job search. And then lastly, certificate programs, you can tack these on as an undergraduate or even get them after you get your bachelor's degree. So you can still get a certificate in, let's say, like data science or UI/UX design after you graduate from college, and that's very common. So a degree is not the most important part. Danny, am I going into your part? I forgot where I'm supposed to.
No, this is your part.
This is me. Okay. So a degree is not the most important part of the college experience, and we're going to go into another report that talks about this. But you need to learn how to manage yourself. You need to build your network. You need to learn how to think. I think this is something that gets really emphasized when we talk about liberal arts colleges and why liberal arts colleges are important to consider. They really focus on teaching and learning. That's all they're doing. So they really want students to learn how to think. They want students to try out diverse disciplines. They have very small class sizes and very flexible curriculum. So you can learn about everyone and learn about everything and get really engaged and curious about the world. And those are the qualities that employers are looking for. And you can gain exposure and experience through college. Again, those co-op opportunities, internship opportunities, courses, research seminars, research opportunities. And one example of this that bears out, and we have a lot of similar data to this, we'll show you our sources on the last slide, but a lot of top companies, if you really look at their leadership, and you'd be like, oh, these guys are 60, so it doesn't matter where they go to school. No, these are new companies. These are young people. And these are the undergraduate institutions where they attended, and they're leaders now in these companies. So NVIDIA, Oregon State, heard of it? No. Arizona, Kansas State, HubSpot, which we probably use here at Illumina Education. We have a CEO from University of Vermont. Of course, those big name colleges are represented, but right alongside them are schools that you consider adding to your list, including Colorado Boulder, which is an excellent school, Worcester Polytechnic, which is a small technical school, but really great engineering and CS programs. Adobe, we got Lehigh in there, Villanova. These are like kind of more rural schools out in Pennsylvania, where kids from the Bay Area are like, what, where? But we would hope that you would be flexible on location if you can get a job at Adobe. And Merck, we've got Penn State, Miami U, some of these schools I've never even heard of, like Widener, I haven't even heard of it. So there's hidden gems out there for you. I hope you'll consider that, and consider that your degree is not the only thing that matters in your job search.
So given all that we've mentioned, our tip would be consider what really makes a college experience successful. So we talked about the Harvard study, now it's on to Stanford. So according to a Stanford report, they found out that the most successful students both in college and beyond, so in their careers, are those who engage in the undergraduate experience, regardless of whether they went to a top ranked or a 200th ranked college. And what does engagement mean? According to the report, emotional support from professors and mentors who really motivated the students to follow their dreams and do their best, whether it's research, internships, classroom engagement. And that emotional support was the key predictor of career success, not the prestige or ranking of the school. So here at Illumin, we advise students to prioritize opportunities for engagement rather than the ranking, to form strong relationships with professors and mentors at school, whether it's through internships and long-term projects that Katie mentioned. And lastly, finding a sense of community, a sense of belonging that motivates you to do your very best at school. And how can Illumin help you throughout this process? We can offer personalized coaching to help you consider what's really important to you versus ranking of the school. Passion discovery to help you look beyond the major and think about what impact you want to make on the world. Locating opportunities to connect you with ideas, resources, and people, perhaps in the industries that you're interested in eventually, and building perspective, always keeping the long term in mind, because college is not the end of the road, it's only the beginning of your discovering your career. So
that's right. And Danny, I think we're ahead of schedule, so I'm going to go back to those case studies and let you go through the other two examples. So we'll start with SS.
Do you mind? I'm going to go back to the first one, because there was a question of arguing that a 3.9 GPA, is that really considered low? And definitely we want to add that context here for this particular example, right? When thinking about the results.
Sure. So 3.9 is definitely very impressive. Sorry to give you the impression that it's not. What we generally see for Stanford is that 3.9 is the requirement. It's really hard to get in with anything lower than that. I think what we're pointing more at is the 33, and also imagining, if you will, that slide a couple back with the math of all those valedictorians, all those people with the 3.9. I think the more important factor here is to recognize what this student did in order to stand out even with the 3.9. So they were up against 30, 40,000 other people with 3.9s, right? Who have self-selected themselves and put themselves in a category where they think they're competitive for Stanford. So it really goes beyond the number, but no, your 3.9 GPA is beautiful and I'm very proud of you. And there's a lot of opportunities for you out there, and we don't want to make you feel bad for having a B, because you never should. Does that answer the question?
It answers the question, but
Okay.
everyone is asking weighted or unweighted now, and I don't know.
Oh, Danny, do you remember?
It is an unweighted GPA.
Unweighted GPA.
So yeah, very impressive.
Is the 33 a factor? Isn't Stanford test blind for ACT, SAT? I don't believe so.
They were test optional this past year, but not blind. So Berkeley down there, Santa Barbara, those two were test blind in the process, but that 3.9 is unweighted and the UCs use a weighted GPA. So I'm guessing that this student had 4.2, maybe something bigger. I think another thing to notice here is all of these activities that the student is involved in related to their passion. They were still able to get that GPA while doing all of this other stuff, which means that they really cared about it, right? They really cared about this other stuff in order to be able to invest all their time in it and still maintain, you know, such a great resume. So yeah, this student could have opted out of sending the 33. That would have been okay. But, you know, as per our earlier trend, it seems to help to submit your test score.
Awesome. We can go to that second case study. There.
All right.
All right. So the first, example was a success with a non-impacted major. The second case study that we see here was an example of success with college fit. Our student SS, GPA 3.8, and she was very involved with community service, reaching out to charity, started her own fashion jewelry business and donated a part of the proceeds to charity on a regular basis. Her background was also in business and marketing. So she eventually ended up getting accepted to Chapman University, which is a great university with an $80,000 scholarship. And looking at her profile, despite not having any kind of major internships or research experience as a business major, she focused her essays around conveying a very specific and strong fit with Chapman's offerings on campus. So for example, in her college essays, she mentioned what she particularly enjoyed about visiting the campus. She also mentioned that she wanted to apply to the 4+1 BA/MBA program at Chapman. She also mentioned specific campus organizations that she plans on joining. For example, she wanted to join the business frat, animal care. So, which was an extension of her involvement with SPCA while in high school. So that was a natural flow. And then also Chapman Crypto, which shows her major and career focus.
Cool.
So, and she capped it off in her essays by showing how she will add to the Chapman community with her unique experiences and aspirations for the future. So
I think that 4+1 program is a good thing to point out too. There are schools with these specialized programs, and with this big scholarship that she's getting, like she's gonna have her MBA with like barely any cost, in the grand scheme of things, which I think is pretty amazing in 5 years. So I think there's these opportunities out there. And again, obviously Chapman decided to fight for her, right, and give her this money and invite her in. So this is a way, if you're trying to accelerate your way into the workforce, accelerate your way to a master's degree, save money. You may have heard of a student loan debt crisis. This is a great example of using your safety schools wisely. Thanks for sharing, Danny. And then one more, right? Okay.
So this example would be an example of success with scholarships at safety/target schools. So we have, we're back to, our favorite major, computer science, one of the most competitive majors out there. And this student wanted to major in CS, created a YouTube channel, built a website to educate the differently abled about career choices, tutoring. And so a lot of charity and community, community impact as well as fundraising for charity. And not the strongest CS focused resume though, without any internships that stand out, or programming, summer programs, anything like that. But she identified ways she planned to apply CS in her career in the future, and showed that through her community involvement. And therefore, she was offered major scholarship dollars from her target and safety schools in an extremely competitive major. So Santa Clara University, Arizona State University, which has the Barrett Honor School that Katie mentioned earlier, amazing achievement.
And I think something to note about these schools too, and I really think this is an amazing result, is if you look at computer science rankings and outcomes, you'll see these schools toward the top of the list. You'll see SUNY Stony Brook, you'll see Arizona State, Texas A&M, really under applied for options with obviously money to give. And this is a really high achieving student who could have focused all of her energy, you know, on applying to top tier colleges and likely would not have gotten, you know, similar results with this profile. So I think she made smart choices. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your students with us, Danny. Right, so I think we're ready for Q&A, Anthony. I wanted to put our sources up just for a second, just because we had a lot of reports there and I want to make sure it gets recorded on the webinar in case we're infringing on something. Anthony, you're muted, but.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, but definitely, one of the other things I've been putting some of the sources in chat or some of the things I'm referencing as well. So definitely feel free to go take a look there. We're going to slowly make our way through the questions, and there are lots and lots of them. So apologies if I skip over yours or I try to come back later. Let's get the big one out of the way because everyone is confused about testing. Given that it was effectively it was optional for 2 years, and now we're coming back and we're saying that potentially that we need to take a look at, you know, doing it or effectively it being a requirement already for some schools, and we're already making that decision, right? Just questions around just this general advice of like super scoring, of thinking about, should I be taking these multiple times? Should I do SAT, ACT? So I guess in a broad sense, like how would you kind of help students approaching that testing aspect?
You want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. Katie, first.
You know me. Okay, so what I would say is an answer that nobody's going to want to hear, which is it's going to depend on a case-by-case basis, what our advice would be. Some of our students are very strong test takers, in which case, yeah, go for it. You know, add it into your schedule a few times and really bust it out, kill it, get a great score. That score is never going to hurt you. It's only going to help you. There are some students who will study for a test in March and then study for a test in October and then study for a test in December and study for a test in January. And they're using all their Saturdays and all their time. They're exhausted. They're burnt out. They're not getting any better. They're sinking tons of money into test prep resources and it's just not going anywhere. And those are the students that I would advise, you know, let's not focus so much on developing something that's not working for you, and let's invest that time and energy into something that is going to make your profile stand out. I would try to advise every student to take the test at least once, and at least probably, since we're seeing more schools requiring it, I'm probably going to go back to my advice of 2 times. So normally what I would tell students is to take the test for the first time after you have finished English 10 and Algebra 2. Those are sort of the levels that you need to be at in order to not have to learn the information that's included on the test and instead just practice the strategies, the timing, the approaches. So usually that's at the end of 10th grade. So study over the summer between 10th and 11th, take the test in 11th grade, and then again later in 11th grade if you need to. No need to take both the SAT and ACT unless you get stuck. If you're really stuck on one score, you can't get above it. Some students who then try the other test instead will all of a sudden see a bump in their score. And you can find a school's super score policy, score choice policy on the College Board website. They have a big fat PDF document that explains how everybody will evaluate your test scores if you're curious about that. But reminder that the UCs, the Cal States are going to remain test blind. Most schools will still be test optional, but we're seeing the advantage with submitting the score.
And then also questions relating to, and I think this is a general rumor that students might hear about, the idea of like, hey, you should not take a test multiple times, that it may actually hurt your application if you see you attempting a test too many times. Thoughts on that?
No. I don't see a reason to hold back. The reason to hold back would be, I don't want you to give College Board any more of your money. But their colleges don't care how many times you take it. I think having the option to take it multiple times, having the option to take it in multiple years is really helpful for students, because then they can time things out, wait till they improve, wait till they have time, space for it. I think more of what it would be construed as is possibly privilege, right? Having the money and the test prep resources to take the test that many times would probably be the one thing that they may look at in a negative light, versus someone who had to, scrimp and save to afford a single test date, or, something along those lines. But I haven't noticed a trend, and we didn't find a trend in our research about taking a test multiple times being a negative thing.
And another way to think about this is also most admission readers on the first pass will be looking at an application for 5 minutes or less.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be going into your testing history to really dig deep at that moment, right? They want to look at all the other things that you're putting in the application, right? So, definitely, yeah. Let's go back to this idea of a non-impacted major. Danny, do you want to try to kind of discuss that? I think when we were talking about computer science a lot and thinking about that's clearly impacted, but what's this idea of non-impacted, or how would you differentiate between what is and isn't?
Sure. So, we get, for example, a super competitive major would be, computer science, business, anywhere in STEM these days, right? Life sciences, biology. Whereas non-impacted major would be majors that you might not have heard about before starting the college, really looking at colleges and what majors they offer. So, looking at this slide here, for example, there's a common misconception that if you want to be pre-med, you have to, major in biology. But very far from the truth. In fact, you can actually major in anything to be pre-med. And so, for example, if you're going that route, you can consider a social science approach, right? So you can, think about majoring in anthropology, human development, sociology, maybe even psychology, majors that are connected to human well-being. And then let's say for computer science, rather than applying as a CS major, which is extremely competitive, looking at
have we told you it's competitive?
Right. Maybe you can consider where you want to apply your CS skills to a certain cause out in the world. So you can be political science, environmental science, or for example, public health major. Using your computer science and programming skills to solve a problem in the world. Similar to engineering, so mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, sort of the most popular, glamorous fields out there. But there are so many other categories of engineering. So civil engineering, environmental engineering. You have aeronautics as well. So you'll definitely have 7 to 8 options depending on the college.
Yeah. There's even like it's called like metallurgical engineer. There's all these like really weird, areas where you can get an engineering degree. And honestly, an engineering degree is an engineering degree. You're going to learn all the same basic skill sets, right? And then just apply your skills in certain areas. So I think I skipped this slide before. Sorry, everybody. But yeah, that's all correct. So students who have a way, again, like skills, right, are going to be valuable at the end of the day versus the degree that you have. So what do you want to do with your degree is actually a more important thing to figure out than the degree itself.
Awesome. Question around and related to majors when thinking about this process of like potentially going in undeclared. How would you kind of help a student kind of thinking about that decision, or if they can't quite decide?
Danny, you want to try?
Undeclared. So, part of what we do at Illumin is to help students discover their interests and majors really early on in the process. So, for example, we have a career personality profiler test that we do with a lot of our underclassmen, and sometimes with juniors too, even as late as spring. And it really, it comes back with a report of dozens of possible career fits. And from there, that informs our discussion going forward in terms of summer planning, and then also, you know, 2 or 3 different areas that the student might want to explore. So even when you're going in undeclared, you will need to discuss. It's a great idea to discuss at least 2 to 3 areas of interest that you'd like to explore in college. So,
Exactly. And a lot of schools will have interdisciplinary programs now where you like having multiple interests is a positive thing. You can find a double major where you can do both. Undeclared as a strategy is going to be potentially a little bit difficult just because you will have to write essays about, you know, yourself and your plans and your interests and your ideas. So if your resume is sitting there and there's 16, you know, poetry competitions that you entered and won, and you're picking undeclared, it's like, well, why isn't she going for writing? Why isn't she going for English communications, right? Why isn't she connecting the dots for us here and showing us, okay, she spent all this time involved in this thing, but she's not going to take it any further. Why not? So they're going to be curious about that. So if your resume doesn't point at anything in particular, you can be pretty flexible with your major. If your resume is pretty clear, like, okay, this kid's interested in biology, I think it would be a disadvantage to not aim for something relevant. But again, it doesn't have to be biology itself. It can be biology has led to my interest in the study of, I don't know, invertebrates. And so I want to study zoology or marine biology or something like that, right?
And of course, the question of thinking about changing your major when you get into the school,
Yeah.
to be honest, it is going to be school by school specific as well, of trying to figure out if the school is more flexible with their program, or maybe even like I went to the Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon, they required a minor, so you almost have to go out and do other things as well, right? So just depending on the university that you go to, there might be more flexibility, there might be less flexibility. Yeah, right here, my stats.
Look how smart our friend Anthony is. Look at that, Tepper School of Business.
ooh.
Awesome. Question around, let me see, I had it. Give me a moment. I'm going to scroll back to it.
Sure.
There was a question around, so we talked briefly about that 4+1 program for the MBA and strategizing around that, right? We had a question about like any advice thinking about BSMD. So I guess just the broader question of like, how would you help a student strategizing towards master's programs or master's degrees as well? Or how in depth would you kind of go into that?
Sure. So I think having a long-term plan is great. The thing to remember about graduate school is there's pathways for you as an undergraduate to follow, regardless of whether you're in the major. So there's pre-law pathways, pre-health pathways. You don't have to study undergraduate business to get your MBA. So you can always make this decision later. If you're already knowing what you want to do and you want to go ahead and find a way to kind of accelerate that, BSMD programs are incredibly competitive for the most part. For those of you who don't know, what it means is you'll apply once to school as a freshman, and you'll be guaranteed admission already to their medical school. So you'll move through your undergrad and your med degree more quickly, and you don't have to worry about like all the tests and all the application process and moving again and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool, but it's so cool that it's incredibly competitive. So a lot of top schools like Northwestern, Brown have these programs, but there's other ones like Adelphi, which is a smaller school. I think it's in New Jersey or New York. They have some really great BSMD accelerated programs. University of the Pacific here in California, they have accelerated pharmacy, dental, medical that would be worth considering. And again, these are safer schools for those of you with 4.0s and above. If you're going for Northwestern, why not go for Adelphi or Pacific? You'll stand out a lot more in those programs. So as far as the accelerated MBAs, they also have bachelor, master's combined programs with like computer science that you can do in 5 years, engineering, things like that. So see if the college has it as an option. There's also 3+2 programs that exist in a lot of places. So Occidental College down in Los Angeles has a 3-2 program where you can go to Occidental for 3 years, get your bachelor's degree, and then it's not guaranteed, but it's sort of like your plan to move on from there and go to Columbia or Caltech and get a second degree in those last couple of years. So you actually end up with 2 degrees from 2 schools in 5 years, and it's a simpler pathway than trying to get into Columbia or Caltech now. So it's worth looking into those unique interdisciplinary programs. I'm going to turn my camera off just for a second because I need to go plug in my computer, but I'm still here.
Let's see. Question about this was from one of the earlier questions actually about specifically it was asking about a particular university, Lehigh. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, but about a change in selectivity that went much higher in the admit rate in comparison. So just wanted to get some thoughts about like what might have occurred or what might have shifted based on that. With schools taking in a lot more students in comparison to the typical trend of schools taking in way fewer students year by year.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So there was an increase overall in the number of applications received at colleges. I know that there were some schools that under-enrolled last year, meaning their yield was low. And so they ended up taking in more students this year. This slide's irrelevant. Sorry, I just can't find a relevant slide. But they ended up having to kind of compensate for that. And also because they're able to take international students again, there's just a higher admit rate, like a boost after the pandemic. And that's why the acceptance rates at top colleges have gone way down because of all those additional applications to schools that everybody has heard of. So Lehigh is a school that has always been kind of around like the 40s and 50s in the US news rankings. They have a great business program. They have other really strong programs too for pre-medical, I believe political science. So my guess is they just kind of lost some steam in terms of their publicity over the last couple of years and kind of ramped that up and wanted to recruit new, better, more diverse students. Yeah, I don't know for sure.
So the impact of COVID still kind of coming with.
We're seeing the ripples of that, yeah.
Right, absolutely. So I know some schools have made, well, a little bit more evidently in the admissions process might have gone the other way as well, of accepting too many students, and a lot more students maybe in California going closer to home in comparison. So.
And we see that with the use of the wait list too. Like the UCs have a lot of kids on the wait list right now because they were just worried about how the numbers would go, if the applications would increase or decrease, if there's had more or less students coming, accepting their offers. So there's a lot of my kiddos on the wait list right now.
A question around kind of planning and I think also the impact of summer extracurriculars. I know a lot of students might still be thinking about like, what should we be doing or what else can we be doing now to really kind of strengthen our profile and get ready for a particular major, right? So I guess, Danny, how would you help kind of juniors going into this process and starting to think about whether what to do this summer or what makes the most sense for what they want to do?
Sure. So, one of my favorite parts of being a consultant is helping students with the passion projects to capstone their experience. Oftentimes it's junior year summer. So, giving them the opportunity to apply what they've learned through their years in their major and creating a project for community impact, making an impact, a positive impact at their school, or by founding their own club in the fall, or even over the summer, organizing a charity event, programming an app to help help disabled community. So things like that would be a really excellent way to show how proactive you are and show your leadership in an accomplishment in your major. Another really effective activity would be research. So, because a lot of times you will be, expected to do research in college. Colleges love to see, especially top colleges love to see that you have a history of doing in-depth research in your potential major. So junior summer would also be a good time to do research. And then of course you have the pre-collegiate programs and, usually we like to recommend hands-on programs. So rather than, let's say you have a choice between just taking a class at maybe a top name college or doing hands-on mentor-led research at a lesser known college, we would definitely advise the lesser known college because it's hands-on as well. Mm-hmm.
Having that kind of more specific experience for the particular major can still definitely be something to present for the application. So awesome. Got a
Remember
few
that
minutes.
sorry. Just
Go ahead.
sorry. I always have to add something. The research experience will be valuable because it's on your resume, but it'll also be valuable because you get to talk about it in your essays and explain how it connects to your future interests and plans and what you learned from it, how you grew, what you contributed in that environment. It can give you stories to tell, right? So it doesn't have to be the most prestigious research to be valuable research. It can also be research that you do on your own and struggle with. I had a student do just a review paper on bioprinting because he's interested in biomedical engineering. He did that from home with mentorship from a professor that he contacted. So it's possible to do cool stuff, and stuff like that shows me he's really interested in that. Why else would he sit around and read a bunch of research papers and review them, right? If he's not actually interested in that. And then he was able to sort of use that within his essays to articulate, you know, his depth of understanding of the field and also what he was interested in researching and exploring in the future. So it's not just about resume development in the summer, it's also about personal development and remembering that you're going to have mentors who could possibly write recommendations for you, things like that. And we're not saying research is easy to get. And as a freshman, sophomore, it's probably going to be really hard. So you can do research on your own, and research isn't always science research. You can do research in anthropology. You can do research on, I don't know, costumes, whatever you want.
Absolutely. I know we're kind of wrapping up. There's a final few minutes, so definitely any final questions, we'll try to wrap up. But definitely if you have any other kind of questions or thoughts, we do have free consultations. I just put the link in the chat, so definitely you can go there to request one, and we'll definitely kind of just continue the discussion as well, right? If we can go to the slide with the alternative majors again, someone requested to take a look at that.
Yeah, still don't know how I skipped that.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Perfect. And just to consider the other kind of alternative majors for students who are kind of getting ready for the process, right? But I guess one final question just to kind of wrap us up and thinking about the application in the context of the local high school compared to international students, compared to if you're applying from another country or an international school and things like that, right? I guess I wanted to ask about like how much the impact of the local context is of, you know, how to help an international applicant prepare compared to someone who is, you know, from Gunn High School or something like that near the Bay Area.
Great question. So I'll, you know, full disclosure, I don't think Danny or I is an expert on international admissions. We do have consultants who specialize in that, but as far as taking the context into account, I think one thing that always happens is your school will send along a school profile, your counselor will send along a recommendation, and these things can provide context to sort of like the median income in your area, the demographics in your area, what other students at your school are accomplishing in comparison to you. They'll also complete a form where they do a rating system of you compared to your peers on different scales. So in terms of responsibility, where do you lie? So they'll see you in context regardless of where you're applying from. If they see that you're from an international community that's maybe lesser represented or, you know, has they're looking at it from their own context as a university. If I don't have a student from Ghana and here I got a really strong applicant from Ghana, I'm definitely going to consider that person more carefully than the 56,000 applicants I have from California, because I want to have a more diverse range of perspectives and backgrounds on my campus. So context does play a pretty big role in considering different applicants, and including the UCs. They consider applicants within the context of their school. They use a system called eligibility in the local context. Things like that will be implemented to review your application and compare your circumstances to the circumstances of students in the States.
Sounds good.
And if you pay the full price, you're in good.
That too. Sometimes international applicants are not eligible for aid, so additional context. But I think we'll wrap up there today. Again, appreciate everyone for coming out and watching the webinar. We will be doing more soon. I need to get the schedule together, but I definitely featuring admission readers over the summer, and also continuing this thought about summer opportunities, major selection, how to start your college essays. A lot of students might be thinking about that soon. So definitely stay tuned. If you're on our mailing list, you'll definitely get all the notifications about it. And definitely feel free to sign up and we'll continue the discussion there. So Danny, Katie, definitely appreciate you guys for joining today and appreciate your time. And thank you all for joining. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.